Hi, I am Ursha, and this is Sound Design Theory. Today I would like to talk about 3 effects designed to be used on voices and that are easily mistaken. Talking about them would be a good opportunity to talk a bit about formants, as they all utilize formants to alter the sound. The 3 effects we'll tackle today are the vocoder, the autotune, and the talkbox effects. So we already talked about formants in the episode about filters, but really, what are they? When a sound is played in a cavity, that can be a room, a box, or whatever, the object containing the sound starts to resonate, and this will make some harmonics in the sound louder due to the frequencies of resonance of the object that it is played in. So this will create peaks in the audio spectrum, and it is those peaks that are called the formants. So when we are talking, it is exactly what we use to articulate vowels. When we talk, our vocal cords vibrate, and then we use the position of our mouth and tongue to produce different formants. That's what makes a E, a R, and an O sound different. They can all have the same fundamental note, but the harmonics are different. And if the harmonics are different, then the sound is different. You can actually note the frequencies of these formants for each vowels, and then you can use filters tuned to these frequencies to make vowels out of any sound. That's exactly what we did in the follow-up video of the episode about filters. I'll put the link there and in the description. Now that we know what formants are, we can see more easily what a vocoder and an autotune effect are, which are often mistaken for one another, and then we'll see the talkbox effect. The vocoder, as an instrument, looks like a synth with a microphone, but it is now available as a VST and softwares, so for this video we'll take Ableton's vocoder stock effect as an example. The purpose of a vocoder effect is to mix the sound of a voice with the sound of an instrument, often a synth. So we would still hear that instrument, but it would articulate words just like the voice. Yeah, that's the vocoder. So to do that, we need 2 signals, a carrier and a modulator. One will be the bass sound that we're going to hear, so that's the carrier. Here it will be a synth. And the second signal will change properties of the first one, that will be the modulator, and here it will be a voice. Yeah, that's the vocoder. So in Ableton you would put the vocoder effect on the track of the modulator, so that would be the track with the voice, and in the carrier section of the effect you can go get the track with the synth. The way it works is that the vocoder splits both signals in several bands, and then it will analyze the level of each band for the modulator and applies those same levels to the carrier sound. You can see this as an EQ effect that is applied to the carrier, so its harmonic content would follow the harmonic content of the modulator. And that means a couple of things. This will work better if the sound of the carrier is rich in harmonics, because we're going to carve frequencies out of it. This can be a synth with a sawtooth waveform, a sound with a heavy distortion on it, this kind of things. This also means that the carrier will inherit the rhythmic qualities of the modulator as well. If the modulator is not playing, no frequency band will be open, so we won't hear the carrier neither. So you could kind of beatbox in the mic to chop up a synth, for example. So as we talked about formants, if the voice says eh, the vocoder will pick up the formants of that eh and apply it to the carrier so the instrument will say eh as well. Then some vocoders will have a formant knob that is pretty cool. It will shift the formants up and down so the tone of the voice will sound higher or lower, but the pitch will actually stay the same. It can sound more like some kind of filter, and on a voice that's how you can change the gender, for example. Yeah, that's the vocoder. 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 Now you can emphasize the effect of that formant knob by playing with the settings of those frequency bands. Here you can set the range of frequencies that will be scanned by the vocoder. Right now it goes from 80 Hz to 10 kHz, but if we make that range narrower, we should hear the effects of the formant knob better. You can also choose the number of bands that you want to use, which can drastically change the sound, and you can even set the level of each band if you want to use it as an EQ. And to clean the signal even further, you also have a gate here, so the sound would be processed only if it's louder than a certain level. On this vocoder, you also have a setting for the width of each band, which is pretty interesting. At 100%, each band starts where the next one begins, but if you make that narrower, you can hear how the sound gets a bit more fluttery. As there will be less frequencies in each band, it will make the sound closer to a sine wave. Or you can also make this bandwidth higher than 100%. In this case, each band will overlap with the next one. So this is mostly how the vowels will be processed, because this will pick up mostly formants, and formants are mostly vowels. So how do we get the rest of the signal? How do we get the consonants? Well, for that, you should have a knob or a section called unvoiced, with a knob that will allow you to bring back up those consonants. It's the part of the signal that is pitchless, like the sibilances, that will be applied to a layer of white noise. Here, the big knob is simply the level of that layer, and the sensibility is a bit like the depth knob there. It's the strength of the filter applied from the modulator to the carrier. This is of course good to make a vocoder voice more intelligible, but it's also fun to use on more rhythmic elements, like beatboxing for example. Now, if you want to experiment more on that kind of sound, you can also select noise as the modulator. In this case, you won't need a separate track, as noise will be used instead of a synth, and this noise is generated directly by the effect. You can then play with this XY pad to change the character of the noise. On the X-axis, it's some downsampling. I explained what it is in the last video about beat crushers, and on the Y-axis, you can change the density of the noise.
Yeah, that the vocoder. 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 Yeah, that the vocoder.
You can try this mode on anything, but I find it particularly cool on drum sounds, especially if you play with the envelope. And if you keep only the high end with the band EQ, you can also use it to enhance the transients of the drums. In the carrier mode, you also have two other options here. You can use the modulator as its own carrier, so that will make a resynthesized version of the same sound, and that's mostly if you want to play with all those settings without actually blending the modulator with another sound, which can also be great for sound design. And you have a pitch tracker mode, which will use an internal oscillator that will attempt to follow the pitch of the modulator. So here the pitch will be given by the modulator instead of the carrier, and you can use the high and low parameters to tell it where to search for the pitch to track. Then, instead of changing the carrier, you can also change the modulator. It doesn't need to be a voice. So if you have a synth that has movements in its pitch, you can use it as the modulator to apply those movements to another synth or to a noise. Or you could use a very low sine wave as the modulator to mix it with the texture of a rich carrier to get a gritty bass. Because remember, the vocoder works with bands, so if the sine wave triggers one band, it's the whole band that will be activated on the carrier, and then you can turn down the depth knob so an even larger band of the carrier can be heard. Now, the autotune is often mistaken for a vocoder, as it can also produce a robotic voice, but the way these effects work are totally different. The autotune effect, unlike the vocoder, doesn't use a carrier and a modulator signals. It uses only the signal from the voice it is affecting. Also, even if it can affect formants, it doesn't use formants in its core processing. So how does it work? The autotune effect is a pitch correction tool. You run a voice through it, it will analyze the frequencies that compose it, and then it will give you options to correct the pitch of this voice so it matches the notes of the scale you want to use. Autotune is actually the name of a particular effect from the company Antares Audio Technologies. But this technology is now available in other competitors' softwares like Melodyne, VariAudio, Wavetune, Isotope Nectar's pitch correction, vVocal, etc. Actually, I researched how exactly it processes the sound under the hood, but it's still very opaque, so let's see how to use it instead. Basically, you put autotune on a track, you select the key of the song you're working on, so autotune can correct the pitch of the voice to that scale. Then you want to select the type of instrument it is processing, so you can have better results. There's instrument and bass instrument, so you can use it on other things than a voice. And finally, you have the speed at which autotune will correct the pitch of each note. You can make it sound pretty natural if you keep it rather low, but you can also make it sound synthetic if you put it at 0 milliseconds. At 0 milliseconds, each note will snap instantly to their corrected position, so you will miss the natural transition between each note, and that's often what is identified as the autotune effect.
What you're waiting for in only 3 words, but I can only say 4.
If you're looking for a more transparent use of the autotune, there are other parameters that are here to help. The humanize function will adjust the speed of the effect depending on the speed of the notes, so faster notes should be adjusted faster, and vice versa. With the flextune parameter, notes will be corrected only when they are close enough to the target note, so this is to keep the expressiveness of the singer.
What you're waiting for in only 3 words, but I can only say 4. What you're waiting for in only 3 words, but I can only say 4.
The natural vibrato parameter narrows the range of the vibratos the more you turn it up, and that is independent of the pitch correction.
What you're waiting for in only 3 words, but I can only say 4. What you're waiting for in only 3 words, but I can only say 4.
That's a lot of options, all related to pitch to manipulate it. But see here at the top, you have 2 modes for all of this, classic and formant. And with formant, you have a throat parameter that is similar to the formant knob we saw in the vocoder.
What you're waiting for in only 3 words, but I can only say 4. I care about.
This one will be a lot quicker to explain. The talkbox is an effect that can't really be replicated with a VST. I mean, there are some, but nah. So basically, with the talkbox, the sound is sent through a plastic tube, and this tube goes into your mouth, so the sound will be played in your mouth, and from there you can articulate words to shape that sound with your mouth. It's a bit like when you play music on your phone and place it close to your mouth to make some wah-wah sound.
What you're waiting for in only 3 words, but I can.
Here, it's directly the mouth that will shape formants organically to physically shape the sound. It's a very fun effect to use, but I can't really demonstrate it as I don't own one myself. You can hear a talkbox in songs that I'm not going to play here for copyright reasons, but you can hear it on the guitar solo in the middle of the song Jambi by Tool at 4 minutes and 10 seconds, which is one of the best songs in the world, or in the intro of Bon Jovi's Living on a Prayer, for example. So that would be all for today, so I'll wrap it up here with this video.